I had just moved to New York. It was my second week of living in the chain hotel in West Village. It's incredibly quirky. It's really, really beautiful. It's something straight out of a Wes Anderson film with the bellhop boys in their pillbox hat, and they had giant moose heads, a very chic little restaurant, as well as like a rooftop bar that they have open during the spring and summer. But I was staying there while I was interviewing for several positions around the city, and I was looking for an apartment, obviously. And having just moved to New York on a whim, I was incredibly, incredibly excited, but also horrified. I mean, I just moved without knowing anyone. It was literally me, myself, and I. And I really wanted to clear my headspace. So I decided to go see a movie. So I decided to go see Gone Girl, which had just hit theater. It was only a 25-minute walk from the hotel to Union Square where it was playing. And so I decided to dress up a little bit, and I threw on this really great Theory black sweater, super easy, this full midi skirt, and these Prada boots that I had splurged on. And yeah, so I went ahead and trotted along towards Union Square. So let's fast forward 55 minutes later, after I have gotten lost, me dragging my ass to Union Square in these gorgeous, gorgeous Prada boots that have murdered my feet. Murdered my feet. I will never get rid of them. That gorgeous. But I made it. I made it to the theater, all in one piece. What can you do? I probably just taken a cab, but didn't feel like it. I finally make it to the theater, only to find out that all of these showings of Gone Girl are sold out except for the last one, which really wasn't that long, and I was like, no big deal, you know, that's great. So I get my ticket and I head up the escalator to go to the concession stand, where I then order, you know, a good sized popcorn with extra butter and extra salt and the largest Diet Coke known to man. And I always order like some form of chocolate because I love chocolate. And I spot some seating, so I make my way around this pillar and I see this guy. So the first thing that I notice about this guy is that he's reading a book. And I thought, how charming is that? I also noticed that there's an outlet really close to him, and I needed to charge my phone. And I thought, you know, this is my ticket in. Maybe I can just go and start a conversation and see what he's about. I mean, we all have those moments of bravery and spontaneity. And this was mine. I was like, let's just take this chance and see what happens. So with chocolate, popcorn, and drink in tow, I make my way over to him. So I calmly walk over to him, ask him if I can charge my phone. He looks up from his book and with this gorgeous smile says, yes, you may. So I sit down my popcorn and my drink and my chocolate, and I pull out my charger and go ahead and plug it in. And I ask him what he's reading. And this is the most serendipitous moment. He is reading Dress Your Family in Corduroy and Denim by David Sedaris, which, if you're not familiar, David Sedaris grew up in Raleigh, North Carolina. Him that the author was from North Carolina and that I had just moved from North Carolina. And he laughed and kind of made the connection and said that he was visiting from Boston. So he asked me what movie I'm going to watch, and I tell him Gone Girl. I'm just waiting for it to start, and come to find out, so is he. So we start chatting about the movie. I had read the book. He had not, so I promised not to spoil anything. But then he started telling me about his plans to sail from Boston to Mexico, which was really intriguing. And that his reason for doing that was for self-reflection in his life. And I felt so bad for imposing myself onto him, but he quickly reassured me that I was totally fine and that I was very welcomed. We must have chatted for an hour and a half, and honestly, I don't remember exactly what we talked about, but I was so mesmerized by his green eyes and blonde hair. That is what I remember. But we were so in depth in conversation also that we realized it was time for the movie to start. So we make our way towards the door into the cinema, and he stops me, and with this face that has now turned so red, he asked, "Will you sit with me?" And I was like, "Of course I will." So let's cut to 2.5 hours later. We're walking out of the movies, baffled and astonished at what we had just watched. Rosamund Pike has gone completely batshit crazy. Ben Affleck is now married to her for life. And I start talking about the differences between the book and the movie. We do that for a good 45 minutes to an hour and then decide to go get pie. Probably his way of having me shut up. No, so I order apple pie, he orders pecan pie, which is so strange to me, but that's what he ordered. So then we decide that it's getting really late and that we should start heading towards the subway. It's getting really chilly at this point, so he puts his arm around me and we're walking side by side. And then it's at this point that I realize I don't know his name. We never introduced ourselves to one another. How insane is that? It's completely insane. As we're walking down into the subway, I turn to him and say, "Do you realize we don't know one another's names?" And with this knowing smile, he turns to me and says, "Yes, I realized that as we were walking." And he kind of straightens up a little bit and says, "Look, I would love to take you to lunch and go get coffee and then dinner and hang out, and we can exchange names and numbers." He's like, "Or," he said, "we can just leave it here on the platform and chalk it up to a magical New York night." And so I took a second and thought, I just moved here and he's going to be sailing down the Atlantic Ocean. That's going to take months. So I looked at him and said, "You know what? Let's just chalk it up to a magical New York night." And that's when it happened. He smiled, he put his arm around my waist and drew me close to him, and then gave me one of the best kisses I had ever had. And I'm not kidding you. At that moment, his subway rolls up, stops, he gets in, and then he leaves. And I never saw him again. And that's it. You could easily say that I floated from the subway to the street. But the last thing I wanted to do was walk back to the hotel in my gorgeous but painful Prada boots. So I just went ahead and grabbed a cab. And as we were on the way back to the hotel, I was looking out the window to all of the buildings passing by, and I thought to myself, and I had this revelation that one of the reasons why I had moved to New York was to fall in love. As a transgender woman, I wanted to fall in love and do so in New York City. And here, 2 weeks in, I had just gone on the most perfect non-date date. I started transitioning from male to female at the age of 28 or 29. When I moved to New York, I had only been full-time around 5 months. So dating to this day is incredibly daunting to me. Prior, I never dated, never had a boyfriend or been in a relationship or nothing. This is completely new territory for me. I feel like a 15 or 16-year-old girl learning to date in high school, except I am a 31-year-old trans woman learning to date in New York City, which is quite comical if you really think about it. But truth be told, I really didn't think I would have this opportunity to date, to find a man who would be comfortable and strong and supportive and caring enough to date me openly. And so, until that day happens, it looks like I will just have to fall in love with New York, which, let's be honest, it really isn't that hard.